No, there's no compliance in these audiences at all. Once they're against you, they're against you.
What was going on that night? You were mad
Oh,
at
I do know.
somebody.
I do that. Here's the thing I got to explain about that because that was isolated in time as if it were a lone incident. When I'm working now in Vegas, I get this a little more often, not a lot. What I'm going to describe on the road, I get it occasionally. Someone who wants to be in the show, someone who thinks their name is on the ticket. I usually say to them, "Check that ticket. Does that have your name on there? I didn't think it did." So it's got my name, so fuck you. I don't want to hear anything. But a lot of times somebody will yell out something that I don't understand at all. And I don't know if it's negative or positive. So I just say, blow me. If I'm in the middle of some thought, if I'm in the middle of a string, if it comes at an interval or something, I probably handle it differently. But if it interrupts me, I'm liable to say that. So I think that's all that was that night.
You weren't mad that night? Because, I mean, there was a whole bunch of stuff written about it. Now it's
Yeah,
like,
well, here's the thing. There's a thing I do on stage that reads as anger by people. I guess I don't blame them for making that error. I'm not an angry man at all, and I really never have been. I don't have a temper. I've never been in a fight in my life. There's no anger in me. Anyone who's been with me 5 minutes or 5 years would say, I've never seen the guy get mad. Irritated a little, in traffic or on a long line that's moving slowly, sure. Irritated. And but in these situations, the kind of things I talk about, they're criticisms. They're critical. They're of a critical nature, and you have to sell them a little bit. So you heighten that tone a bit, and the larger the hall is, because I work generally, like 2,500 seat halls, 2,000, 2,500. The larger the hall is, the more theatricalized that feeling is. So it reads as anger, but all I can say is it's more of irritation on my part at my species, irritation and disappointment in my culture in America, what we had to start with, what we could have done, what the species could have done if it had only made a few good decisions, wise decisions, instead of playing to its greed and its weaknesses. So I'm actually a little bit hot under the collar about that. I don't know the right word to use for this stuff anymore, but I feel betrayed by my fellow humans.
we'll get into that. After that MGM thing here in Las Vegas, there's a bunch of stuff in the newspaper
Matt,
columns and
yeah,
things like
what's,
that.
what's his name? Oh, Matt. The guy with the eye patch. What's
Yeah,
his name?
Norm.
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 I keep wanting to say Matt. I'm sorry, Norm.
So I go on the internet and there's all these chat groups that
Oh
talk
yeah,
about you
good.
and do this and that, and there was reviews. So I'm reading these reviews, and you know how you're bit about people being stupid. Well,
Yeah,
this was clearly a bunch of stupid people. There was some people who were mad at your show because you used vulgarities,
yeah,
and that you seemed angry and were critical. And I'm thinking, what the hell?
yeah.
What the hell show did you people think you were going
When
to?
did they get on the bus? The bus left the station a long time ago, or a train or whatever, some mode of transportation that they were unaware of. We were all traveling on all these years, and they just got on at the last stop. I know it's surprising to me to have such a breadth of exposure to audiences. I've done 12 HBO shows. I've done 3 books. I've done all these albums. I guess 19 original albums, about 23 counting reissue things and everything. And I've been around doing this since 1960. Well, with any visibility since '65. So that's 40 years. And there's some people who, I didn't know he did that, and it's understandable. It doesn't hurt my ego. It just makes me wonder where they've been, what's going on, because, there are a lot of people I know about who I've never seen, but I know about them,
New home here at the Stardust. Long-term relationship, you think?
Well, whatever develops, sure, yeah. We're going to be here for a year for certain, and I like to take a little time away from the road. I do it varies over the years, but I've done as many as 80 or 90 shows a year out in the rest of the Republic, and then would come here. I get to write all day when I'm here. I get to settle down and do a show at night, but have the days of non-travel, no travel, no packing. So that's an attraction, and it balances off the road a little bit for me.
You had 16 weeks off the road.
I did. I went in rehab. I told this many times. I actually wrote the press release myself when I went in to rehab from having a few too many Vicodins. It doesn't sound like a lot to people when I say I had 4 a day, because there are people who do 30 and 50. But 4 a day, I saw them leaning towards 6, and I can do arithmetic, and I know where that goes. It's an opiate. It doesn't get, the number doesn't get smaller. So, and then I was drinking too much wine too, especially after shows. I really never had a jackpot in my life from it. I didn't have any DWIs. I didn't have any incidents, you know, that came from drinking. But I was a sneaky, careful, private drinker, and I was what they call a functioning alcoholic, without any visible, you know, no, he's not slurring, he's not staggering. But I knew, and I can do arithmetic, so I said, well, it's time to get this out of my way, because at some level or another, this is going to get worse.
Yeah, it was. You didn't hit rock bottom.
No.
You didn't get arrested.
They call it having a high bottom when you're in AA, as opposed to a low bottom, like a guy's who backed, you know, guy says, I backed into a sheriff's car, and it was the second time I had done that. It was my 15th, you know, you hear some stories, and I'm not going to make fun of people. They're heart-rending, these stories that you hear people go through. I feel almost like a counterfeit being in AA with my high bottom, you know. But they're all the bottom, you know, they say it's a funnel. We're all different at the top of the funnel, but when you get down to the bottom of that funnel, we're all the same because we can't control our intake.
Did you have to concentrate entirely on rehab, or were you able to
no,
to write?
Oh no, I had to do rehab. I had to. I mean, that's the way, kind of the way I would approach anything of that serious a nature, would be to throw myself into it thoroughly. And I knew a little about the program in general. I was pretty much conversant with AA and a lot of the things about the program because my wife had been clean and sober for 22 years at the time of her death in 1997. So I knew some of the handholds and footholds, and I just had to apply everything to myself and relearn some basic things.
Las Vegas changed a lot. You've been coming here now how long?
Well, the first time someone asked me today, and I realized, well, I didn't realize it today, but I first worked in this city with Jack Jones at the Flamingo Hotel when I was a suit and tie, straight comic, you know, no beard, nice hair, suit, tie, and all that stuff. And I think I wore a tuxedo at that time even. So that was 1965. That's 40 years of that. But then I came back and was at the Frontier, and that was where I had my change went on when I realized I was entertaining. Kind of over time, I had been entertaining the wrong people. The young culture had emerged, and I realized that's where I belonged.
You know, you think about people that have entertained here over the years, and the great ones, great writers, great entertainers, Elvis and Hendrix and John Lennon, and then writers like Hemingway and Steinbeck and Hunter Thompson, all of whom have had substance problems, booze problems. Do you think about a link to creativity from that kind of stuff?
Well,
and does it change you at all not to have any?
No, it doesn't change anything about not having it. What I was told a long time ago, long before, back when I was using cocaine in the 70s to a great excess, and I cured that myself by just slowing down and stopping at that time. That's why I didn't think I had a problem, because I could do that. I didn't think a small amount of stuff like pot and beer, which I kept doing, was a problem, because I can quit cocaine. I'm not an addict, or I'm not, you know. So, but back in those days, a really sharp shrink told me, he says, you're not productive and creative and bright because of your drugs. You're that way in spite of them. So if you take them out of the picture, you know, you might even shine brighter. So now there is an interesting hookup between writers and alcohol, though, with the number of great American novelists, especially from this century that we know of, who were drunks. And it's an interesting area that I don't think has been thoroughly studied enough, you know, to have a definitive answer. There's no question that when you alter your consciousness, you open windows of perception. You just see things and feel them a little differently. So I like to think that I'm that way anyway, and that if the extra boost isn't worth, if there is an extra boost, not worth all the stuff that comes along with it.
Could tell from the tone of your performance tonight. I mean, some of the themes are the same, the politics and religion.
Yeah, social stuff. Yeah.
The re-election of President Cheney, is that good for you?
Well,
Excuse
me. One thing I've never done much of, and this is a fine distinction, but it's true, I don't really do topical humor about personalities or the individuals in today's gallery. an occasional joke about George Bush to illustrate another point. But I don't kind of say, oh boy, you know, Michael Jackson, and I'll do that. I never really liked that because those things are perishable. And in 2 weeks or a month or something, they're out of date. And I hate throwing away things that are good. So I leave that alone. But in general, this country being in the hands of Christian fanatics, both of the Christian clergy and the, you know, the true believers, and of the political stripe, that's good for guys like me, because it creates the kind of society that that rubs against me, that pushes against me, and produces, you know, friction, produces good stuff from me.
But bad for everybody else. I mean, you look at the level of intolerance now. You can't say the things you can't say.
No,
which you've been talking about for a long time, but and can't think, and you have this Terry Schiavo kind of thing.
Yeah.
You have to believe this, and it's.
And let's not forget an interesting thing that was pointed out recently, last year or two in the book, What's the Matter with Kansas? Why do these people who work for a living and need their wages and need their jobs and need their pensions, these blue-collar people, many of them have white-collar jobs, but they're blue-collar folks, why do they keep voting in these rich people who don't care about them? I mean, I'm not saying you have to vote Democratic, but at least look closely and stop electing people who don't care about you. They just, this system in this country is rigged against the little guy. It's rigged against the little guy, and the little guy keeps putting in these money grabbers, just keeps putting them in one after another, and those people don't care about them in the least.
Nihilism is looking.
Yeah.
I mean, you know.
I love disorder and entropy. I root for things to unravel. I root for the circles to get smaller around the drain.
Your case that went to the U.S. Supreme Court basically codified the fact that the FCC has the power to limit this stuff. What can be said on the airwaves, and now you've got you know, Janet's nipple on the air, and you got Howard Stern leaving radio to go to satellite radio. And they're saying they're going to go after him and expand the power to keep people from hearing stuff. I mean, any pangs of guilt over your?
Oh no, because it would have been some other case that developed into that. I had an early, the case of mine was decided in 1978 in a 5-4 decision that the FCC had the right to sanction stations that played anything considered indecent. It was a very fine ruling because it had nothing to do with obscenity. Obscenity has a different three-stage test, but indecency they had made up. They created a category of filth just for me, just to define what I was doing. So, of course, no pangs of guilt, but it is interesting that, well, I said it a long time ago, we're in a pre-fascist state. And I said, when fascism comes to America, it will not be wearing jack boots and brown shirts, and it will be wearing Nike sneakers, and it will have smiley face buttons on the Hard Rock
and carrying a flag.
Yeah, of course.
And a Bible.
Always that. Yeah, there's a thing in the early part of my book, whatever they call those pages where you put some quotes before you start to write your book, page full of quotes. Yeah. There's one thing in there by Goebbels in this one. It's too long for me to quote it from memory, but they talk about, Goebbels talked about exactly what the Bush people are doing now.
Yeah, it's like people can't say anything remotely critical about the war because that means you're attacking the troops. Right, you can't say anything bad about the troops. You got people like Dennis Miller, who's a really sharp guy, colleague of yours, who now has taken a wild divergence to the right. Yeah, and isn't funny anymore.
Well, I don't pass judgment on funny. I think he's still got that good mind I like, that analytical, critical mind, and I get my laughs from things from time to time. But I've never been comfortable because I'm at heart a lefty. You know, if I fell out of an airplane, I would land on the left side of that line. You know the difference that I define the difference between right wing and left wing. People to the right of center. Well, let's start with the people to the left. People to the left of center, liberals, Democrats, populists, they're interested in people, human beings and human values. People to the right of the line, Republicans and rich people and right-wingers, they're interested in property, not people. And they're soulless. They're without soul. They don't really care. They don't. These Christians don't do Jesus' work, which is to feed the poor and take care of the ones who can't help themselves. That's what their Jesus said. Feed those who have no way. To take ones who have nothing going for them. Help them in my name. Don't even want to know about it. Where's that tax return I get? I want my what do they call it? The rebate. I don't know. It's goofy. It's just goofy, man.
So, are you serious when you're right? You think the human race is toast? The planet will be fine, but we're toast.
Yeah, I think we've you know, this species organized itself very poorly. We had such ability to cooperate and compete. That was what made us unique when we came out of the trees and out of the jungle into the savannah. We were able to cooperate in the hunt, cooperate in finding berries in the gathering stage, and we were able to compete with the environment and the other predators. And now it is mostly compete, very little cooperation. You see you see the rowboats during the floods, but they're quickly gone. You see people, they pat each other on the back about what we did for the tsunami victims, because that happened instantly, and it was a good news story. It was a one-day story. But the starvation in Darfur and the long-term things that go on, we don't react to them because they're not newsworthy, they're not exciting, they're not glamorous, they're not sexy. We don't care. We fly right over Darfur and Sudan on our way to give our old clothing with the tax return, with the tax break on it to these people. You know, it's just.
You left tsunami off your list of natural disasters.
Yeah, it's too exact for people. I want them to know it belongs in there, but it's too. That's why I don't even say tidal wave.
You said in an appearance with Tony Hendra one time, and I read about this, that you don't really think you change people's minds. Is that true?
Well, the testament I get from people would say, oh, that's wrong. There have been people who told me, gee, I looked at that in a whole new way, or you really made me think about X, Y, or Z. And my father and I used to fight all the time, and then we started listening to you, and we both agree on this, that, and the other. You know, so yeah, you do shift people's opinions, because humor lowers the guard, and you can get a message. I don't come around trying to deliver messages, but that's what they are when they get there. I'll put it this way. When a person laughs, they lower their guard, and they're open to a new idea. Whereas these people who are closed, like this mental attitude, you can't get through that. But if you get them to kind of give up for a second, it's that thing. The shamans used to make the gods laugh, because when the gods laughed, you could access the sacred, and they could get into the gods' world. But without the laughter, they couldn't do it.
Give us a synopsis of your career. You got a lot of irons in the fire. It's like you didn't skip a beat.
No, I love my work, my writing, and my writing turns into two things: books or stage shows. And the stage shows turn into CDs and DVDs, and those are just delivery systems.
Books doing well?
The first book, the third book, the last one came out in October, 500,000 copies hardcover. 500,000. I'm so proud of that. I keep bragging about it because it's unusual for a comedian on your third book. You know, usually you get a little downhill by the third book.
And you're banned in Walmart? That must be a badge of honor.
I thought that was so nice. They had only ordered 2,500, but Walmart didn't like the cover of the book because I airbrushed Jesus out of the Last Supper and put myself in. Apparently that didn't go over well with what they perceived to be their audience. There's another wicked, evil corporation that it's just nice to be on the opposite side of things.
Final question. I'd read that you read a lot of books like this, cutting edge physics and quantum stuff. And,
I read a lot of articles, and I try to read the books.
And alternate dimensions, parallel universe.
So
you think there's people out there and that they're as fucked up as we are?
It would surprise me as it would surprise you, George. I know that you hold this sort of belief, I'll call it. If this were the only thing that the universe stumbled into, this life of people we have here, whether it's a god or whether it's some kind of organizing energy, I'll be fair, I wouldn't give you any deities. Yeah. An organizing energy, there's got to be a lot of stuff, man. The bubble, I'm just wanting to see how that string theory works out, and the bubble and the chains and what's in there. And I mean, there's no end to the things you can imagine, and they're bound to be some of them actual.